This episode of IzzyLand Uncut is brought to you by Anchor. Start your career in podcasting with Anchor. Go to anchor.fm and sign up today. It's quick, easy, and free.
No, we are like we're literally a lost generation because we were shut out of jobs almost all our lives by 3 recessions and by the fact that the generation prior to us held what jobs remained. So, it's like the majority of my generation never got a chance to make it up into the middle class and the good life and all that shit. But anyway, I digress. What I remember is that there were laws like head and master laws where women, literally had to get, a male co-signer, like a father or husband particularly, not just from, medical care and medical treatment, but to be able to open up a bank account, apply for a credit card. Under the head and master laws, a woman, even if she worked at a job, and most jobs back then that were open to women paid diddly. It was just the pin money. It wasn't like a breadwinning salary jobs. It was just, like jobs that didn't pay hardly anything.
Hey guys, it's Ishmael Bowden, the creator and founder of IzzyLand and host of the podcast series IzzyLand Uncut. In this episode, I got the chance to sit down with Jacqueline Homan, a fellow member of former presidential candidate Andrew Yang's base, the Yang Gang, and who I've also spoken with multiple times on another related podcast called the Yang Gang Roundtable. We talked about various issues from political to things like corruption, abuse, and human trafficking. Now, I almost wasn't able to do this interview because I involuntarily pulled an all-nighter due to my insomnia and sleeping problems. However, I really wanted to give Jacqueline the platform to tell her story and share her insight. She has a lot to say, and that is why I personally invited her onto the podcast. A conversation full of raw, authentic emotions with barely any interruptions. That's what this podcast is all about. So let's jump right into it. Ready?
Start the countdown.
10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0.
What's up, everyone? You are now listening to the 3rd podcast episode of the uncut, uncensored, unscripted version of IzzyLand. I'm your host, Ishmael Izzy Bowden, and today I'm joined by my guest, who's an insightful individual on issues like corruption, abuse, poverty, politics, healthcare, social systems, and also has knowledge on trading. Allow me to introduce fellow member of the Yang Gang, Jacqueline Homan. Jacqueline, welcome to IzzyLand.
Hey.
So for starters, did you see Andrew Yang's DNC speech?
I didn't have a chance to watch it because I had a lot of other things going on, not the least of which was dealing with medical issues with self-care as a diabetic, struggling without all the resources I need to properly take care of myself. So
yeah, I mean, are you sold that the Biden and Harris that he's trying to push for, you think that might work, or are you just like uncertain about that? Yeah, I take that as a like.
Here's the thing. I'm 53 years old. And ever since before I was old enough to be able to vote, that guy had political power in Congress, and he did jack and shit for the poor, jack and shit for marginalized people.
Yeah.
Now he's being held up as
he's
somehow going to save us from 45 years of neoliberal policy and propaganda and brainwashing that have basically given America's more privileged and more economically fortunate groups permission to say, fuck the poor, fuck the marginalized, let them suffer and die. I'm sorry, I don't buy it. You know, and quite frankly, his nomination of Kamala Harris, do you know how many poor black moms she put in jail?
Yeah.
Because their kids were truant?
I actually saw this. I saw this video online where I think one of the guys that she, this was when she was like a district attorney, right? And she, there was this one guy that was wrongfully accused, and I believe he was even a celebrity. Like he was on like this show called I Love New York or whatever, and he mentioned that, over in the San Francisco Bay, he there was this allegation that he saw, like, he shot so and so or something like that, and Harris attorney general office or whatever, I believe they just they just believed the witness or something, and this guy got, like, I believe several years in jail, maybe even more.
Eyewitness testimony is notorious for being inaccurate.
Yeah.
Okay. People, the teams of lawyers, very, prominent, well-respected lawyers at the Innocence Project will tell you, statistically, the data bears this out, that eyewitness testimony is not very reliable.
Not always, no.
Not always. Sometimes it is, but a lot of times it's not.
Sometimes it's opportunistic.
Harris, she didn't want to, even though this man was facing the death penalty in San Quentin's gas chamber, even though he was innocent, even though there was DNA, she didn't want to admit that evidence. She would have rather seen an innocent man get sent to the gas chamber in San Quentin.
Yeah.
I believe her tenure as district attorney was when Sarah Cruzan, who was a human trafficking victim that many of us in the human trafficking survivor community were pushing for with Twitter campaigns for years to put pressure on the state of California to overturn her conviction and release her.
But she doesn't support the death penalty, as she always says. It's like...
I just have trouble. I have a lot of difficulty having trust in people who have a track record like that. I mean, Sarah Cruzan, she was 16 years old when she killed her trafficker in actual self-defense, okay? And quite frankly, I think the girl should have gotten a fucking Congressional Medal of Honor, okay? Just FYI, right?
Yeah.
And it took older survivor leaders like myself, like Vanita Carter, like Leslie King, like Barbara Maya, several years of, mounting a groundswell of outcry to protest that, Sarah Cruzan, as a victim of trafficking, was sentenced to life in prison. She was like in her 30s when she was finally released from Chowchilla, and California only did it on the grounds that she would not turn around and sue the state,
Yeah.
When the state actually failed because it should have protected her and failed to. I mean, come on, we're talking about an underage victim of trafficking here. And and there was other instances where Kamala Harris bragged and even laughed about sending poor, most of them single moms, to jail.
For smoking marijuana?
No, not just for smoking marijuana. If their kids were truant. If their kids were truant from school.
No.
Now, if you're homeless, if you're living in the constant 24/7 survival mode crisis of poverty, that shit alone is why a lot of poor kids are truant. Okay?
Right.
And that's not even getting into all the extra problems of bullying that poor kids are subjected to when they do show up at school. Right? And the fact that, okay, instead of addressing their poverty, she handled it by, well, we'll just put these poor parents who are already browbeaten and downtrodden by the system, okay, in jail. I mean, I just have difficulty putting any trust in either Biden or Kamala Harris. Now, that said, the fact that they are a better choice than Trump, I can't disagree with that.
Yeah.
But, you know, suppose I might be wrong, and that's possible. Except having seen this shit show play out over and over again, you know, for decades. Decades.
Yeah.
Suppose I'm proved wrong. Suppose I'm proved wrong, and Biden and Kamala Harris end up really doing the right thing for the people, for everybody in America.
We can only hope, right? No.
Yeah. Yeah, I can hope and pray I'll win the fucking lottery and won't be poor and living in a house with a roof that's caving in with all my belongings crammed into one downstairs room.
I mean, here's the thing. Here's the only positive I see out of this.
It fucking happen.
Yeah, I mean, here's the only positive, if anything, I see from this. Okay, so a Biden-Harris ticket might work if and only if our people take over Congress, because like there's a lot of corruption in both sides, within the House and the Senate, especially like with Pelosi and Mitch, and we're definitely going to get into them delaying the stem check and all that. But think about it, we got to get people like us who are willing to get stuff done and not waste any time, not do any of this bickering and grandstanding and whatever. Just have people like-minded individuals who take over major seats, especially speakers of House and Senate, because the speaker has the final say. And thing is, if we can make that accomplishment, if we could get people like David Kim, Donna Ingram, Blair, I believe Blair Washington is already in for the Tennessee District 1.
I'd like to see more people from poverty be put into Congress, because it's all these people with a certain degree of privilege, economic privilege. I'd like to see a lot more poor people, a lot more average, ordinary, everyday people.
Those who represent America, but also they're not trying to play politics. They're actually they want to help the people.
They also have a really solid grasp and a real working understanding of how all these, so-called programs of our shredded, practically non-existent safety net work. Okay. So, I mean, that's, I just want to see some people that, get in there that aren't just going to be bought off. And
grassroots.
She talked a good game, but she's now singing the neoliberal corporatist tune. And yet she talked a real good game before she got elected. She talked a real good game for a little while after she got elected. Now all of a sudden she's towing the line, right?
I'm like you. I can smell bullshit from a mile away. It's like I've dealt with that also for decades. It's like even though you're much older than me, it's like I've seen, it's literally the same sort of stuff that you hear these politicians and bought up politicians say whatever. It's literally what I've been hearing, in my community, in my family, and people that we're supposed to rely on, and organizations and state agencies and hotlines and stuff. They talk just like these politicians, just like those who are bought, in Congress. So I'm just, there's no way I can describe it, because I hear when I hear these, people like Harris or Pelosi, when I hear them speak or whatever, it literally sounds like what I hear within my family or from my freaking therapist or doctors or law officials.
You know what it sounds
It's
like
like,
to me when they speak? Did you ever
yeah,
watch the old Charlie Brown cartoons, the old Peanuts,
yeah, wah, wah, wah,
Remember the
wah,
ones where
wah.
they're sitting in the classroom and the teacher's going blah, 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 blah. Well,
Yep,
that's kind of
yeah.
like how it sounds to me. Blah, 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 blah,
Whole bunch of nothing, no substance, no
whole bunch of nothing but
straightforwardness.
getting served up to the public and, being sold to the public as if it were, chocolate candy when it's really nothing but pretty packaged up dog shit.
I don't know if you saw this video, but I did like send you a link. It was this one YouTube video with Justin Trudeau from who's the Prime Minister of Canada, but he has these alleg- allegations or convictions that against him that has to do with, I believe it sounds like fraud or stealing money or something like that. And there was this one guy confronting him. I believe his name is Pierre. Like I confronted with my friend, and she knows who he is. And he's French, and I believe he's a
Oh,
politi- yeah,
is he from
politician is,
Quebec?
huh?
Is he from Quebec? That's the French Canadian province.
Yeah, I believe he is. I mean, that's the the biggest province. I mean, there are others, but there's it's pretty small, whatever. But over Quebec, like, yeah, that's where most of the French are. So I believe that's where he resides. But but I saw this video where Pierre, he was confronting Justin Trudeau on his crimes and such, and he literally asked him a question. Okay, can you give me a number as to, I believe, how much your family makes or something related to the crime? And rather than answer the question straight up, Justin Trudeau, he started talking like Kamala Harris and Pete Buttigieg and stuff like that. Started like talking around the question and
Yeah.
stuff. And then Pierre was persistent. Like, he said, no, 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 no. I asked you straight up. Give me a number, okay? Give me a number, Trudeau. And he kept on doing the same. Like, he was like, my mother is like, no, 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 no. Give me a number. Give me a number. And then coincidentally,
Oh, they're so good at being the artful
yeah,
dog, aren't they?
yeah. And
Aren't
what's
they
worse,
so good at that?
yeah, I'm like, yeah, and then the guys who were the other guys who were in the video or representatives and stuff, like, they were like saying, okay, just let Justin answer the question. They were being like nonchalant about it and enabling him, like, dancing around the question and stuff, when Pierre, like, he wanted a straight answer. And like, my friend who's in the French, she's in Quebec or whatever, she like, it's known that the English side in Canada, they're not really much of a fan of Pierre because he is so aggressive and stuff, and he's no nonsense, and they're like just so terrified of him. And I'm sitting there going, like, we need more people like Pierre, because, I mean, imagine if Pierre confronted, like, Biden, Harris, or freaking
Well, back in
Pelosi and Mitch and all
1789, the French had a really efficient solution for when the people were starving and not getting basic survival needs met.
that.
Well,
Yeah.
the upper classes were living large, and that solution was the guillotine, otherwise known as the national razor. And if shit doesn't shape up soon here, I don't know. It's gonna get ugly as hell. But the other thing is too is, let's suppose I'm wrong. Let's suppose for once in 53 years of my life, I'm wrong. And Biden and Harris end up really grabbing the bull by the horns and, solving our problems and getting money to the people, which, that's what we need. Okay. Yeah. Because even without COVID, there's, the jobs pie has been shrinking quite rapidly for quite some time now. Okay, and this country has never had an honest discussion before about all the people being permanently pushed out of the economy. It's as if we don't exist.
Yeah.
Well, suppose, for sake of argument, that, which, we know this is probably more unlikely than you or I winning the Powerball jackpot, right? But just suppose I'm wrong. And they end up doing, helping us with what we need. Do you know that it will cause such a backlash among people who are diehard Trump supporters? I'm not talking about former Trump supporters that are now Yang Gang. I'm talking about people
like
who
religious, hardcore,
I am talking about people who are diehard. Trump could drop a nuclear bomb on this country's own citizens, and they would still say, "Yay, Trump! He's making America great again."
Yeah.
I'm telling you, there's going to be such a backlash because, this country not only has problems with racism, also has problems with misogyny and sexism. And even if Joe Biden and Kamala Harris do try to do at least some right things, there's this not insignificant undercurrent of people, and we know who they are. We don't have to mention any names. We know who they are. And there will be such a backlash that it might just unleash Civil War 2.0.
Yeah.
Even if it means that they themselves will be shooting themselves in the foot, because they would rather stick a fork in their own eye than see the poor, than see the old, the disabled, people of color, particularly black people, get one fucking dime.
They have their own agenda.
Get anything, Yeah. I mean, let's face it, America was never great. There's a significant lot of people for whom America was never great. Never. And in my own lifetime, I can attest to some of it. Child abuse wasn't even a crime until I was in my early 20s.
Yeah.
Neither was domestic violence. And in fact, women were, for all intents and purposes, male property. I mean, if you got married, that marriage license was treated in a court of law like that guy held a pink slip title to a fucking car.
Yeah.
If you got beat and you called the cops because of domestic violence, it was, well, what did you do to provoke him? Well, you should learn how to behave so he won't beat you. I mean, this is the America I grew up in. It wasn't all, people want to romanticize these so-called golden days. Who were they golden for? They sure as hell weren't golden for the poor. They weren't golden for women. I know damn well, I can't relate. I'm not a black person. So when a black person does tell me how bad things were for the black community, I'm going to believe them, because I know that things were not great for even white women. Things were not great for us. Okay.
Let me tell you this.
Say, these great old days. No, they weren't great. And I'm here to tell you, I remember those days, and they were not great. They sucked.
Yeah.
They sucked horribly. And why? I can only sum it up in that, as a country, this was a country that was founded on mostly rejects from Europe. So, rejects that were self-serving. You had demagogues, religious demagogues, the Calvinists that were so obnoxious that they were kicked out of England and Holland. Holland, who was like the bastion of tolerance back then in the day. Holland even got sick of their shit, and the Puritans came here. And what did they do when, what was the thanks at the Wampanoag and the other local Algonquin indigenous tribes of the Northeast, and helped them to survive, because they didn't know jack or shit about how to survive in this country. Different climate, everything. The thanks they got was they were slaughtered because these Puritans felt that God gave them this country to be a shining city on a hill, and it was their duty to vanquish these non-Christian savages and heathens. I mean,
the divide and conquer shit.
This isn't revisionist history. This is fact. This is fact.
Yeah.
And when you look at how land grants were dispensed from the crowned heads of Europe, because there were a lot of wealthy Europeans that came here too, and they were the second sons of Europe's noble families. And back then, under what's known as the law of primogeniture, which it actually derives from 4th century Salic law, in which women were like part of the inheritance. They weren't inheritors. They were part of the inheritance. Okay? If you get me, the sexual and reproductive chattel. Yeah, it was like that. And under Salic law, which is why for centuries, women didn't, rule, meant it was only the firstborn males. Well, the law of primogeniture was a, sort of like a compromise in the Salic law, where it was like, well, after the males inherited, then a daughter might inherit. But under primogeniture, the first sons of these wealthy families got everything. They got the titles, they got the family estate, they got all the money, they got everything. Daughters got fuck all. And so did the second sons. And a lot of these second sons, were very, very resentful about that. So they, got resources from the family to come here and strike out and build their own fortunes. And we know how those fortunes were built. We're not going to, have a sugar-coated discussion about that. We know how those fortunes were built. They were built on genocide, slavery, and the oppression and, ongoing oppression of women.
It was blood money.
Okay.
Yeah.
It was blood money, straight up, Izzy. It was blood money. And, when they were talking about freedom, they were talking about the freedom to get theirs at the cost of an expense of others, and, so even, in my own lifetime, and I was born in 1967, so I lived through and seen a lot of shit, right?
Yeah, a lot of went down from then on.
A lot of what went down, right? And when I'm telling you that as recently as 1985, and I'm the oldest of my cohort, Generation X, right?
Yeah.
Which often gets either lumped in with either boomers or millennials, but no, we are like we're literally a lost generation, because we were shut out of jobs almost all our lives by 3 recessions, and by the fact that the generation prior to us held what jobs remained. So, it's like the majority of my generation never got a chance to make it up into the middle class and the good life and all that shit. But anyway, I digress. What I remember is that there were laws like head and master laws where women, literally had to get, a male co-signer, like a father or husband, particularly, not just from, medical care and medical treatment, but to be able to open up a bank account, apply for a credit card. Under the head and master laws, a woman, even if she worked at a job, and most jobs back then that were open to women, paid diddly. It was just the pin money. It wasn't like a breadwinning salary jobs. It was just, like jobs that didn't pay hardly anything. And,
it was one of those laborers 9-to-5 jobs sort of thing.
Yeah, and a woman could deposit her paycheck from the hours that she worked into her bank account, and a male relative, which would include even a son, could literally take ownership control over any property a woman might come into possession of, and dispose of that property without her permission, without even letting her know about it first. That was headmaster laws. Those were not repealed until the mid to late 1980s, when I was in my early 20s.
Yeah.
So all this nonsense about how, well, we're all equal now. No, we're fucking not. Centuries of cumulative disprivilege adds up. Just like wealth compounds, well, so does poverty from disprivilege. That also compounds as well. And given the fact that, our country just has not had a very, very good history as far as systemic injustices to various groups, and that's not even getting into, the shaft that people that are disabled get, okay, and continue to get, right?
Yeah, like autism.
There just isn't a very good track record. I mean, when COVID broke out, state lawmakers and governors were openly saying, well, people who are diabetic, that's an autoimmune disease, right? Okay. That if we get this COVID, we wouldn't even get treated. We wouldn't even be offered a ventilator. We'd be left to suffer and die, drowning in our own freaking lungs in an emergency waiting room hallway. I mean, this
pretty much.
kind of shit, okay? And this is in 2020. The Americans with Disabilities Act was passed back in, 1991? And yet, where was the promise of equality of opportunity and equality of rights of citizenship for disabled Americans that law was supposed to guarantee for us, for disabled Americans and for Americans with chronic health issues? It still has yet to materialize. When we have lawmakers and state leaders openly saying, yeah, let disabled people who get COVID die. We're gonna, give the ventilators to more worthy people. I mean, come on. This is the kind of society and culture we live in. And I'm not hopeful at all. I think Andrew Yang, as well-meaning as he is, this is a guy who grew up in the upper middle class. He went to Exeter. Okay. He didn't face what I faced as a poor woman growing up in the time that I did. And let me tell you, opportunity has a shelf life. Now that I'm 53 and disabled and living in a rural area without the ability to even afford a car, okay, 99% of all doors to any economic opportunity are closed to me forever. Opportunity has a shelf life, and there are so many of us who've suffered because we've been deprived and oppressed our entire lives and told to shut up, stop our whining, stop complaining. Like, I shouldn't complain of having to go without health care my whole life, being shut out of jobs my whole life. I shouldn't complain about not being able to afford a house that's safe and secure in, a neighborhood that's not dangerous. I should just, even though my lack of privilege paid for other people's privileges and benefits, I should just shut up and be grateful that they even let me fucking live.
Yeah, and the point I want to bring up, like, I'm glad you even mentioned that, because this is why I noticed, like, they'll tell people, like, yo, shut up, be grateful, get a job, whatever. Like, they're telling this to, the older folks and a lot of us, and what's going on is that we're projecting that same narrative or whatever to, like, the next generation, and and to our own loved ones and stuff, and then they pick up on that same sort of talk or whatever, and to the little guy or whatever, they say, oh, just shut up, and you should be grateful, get a job, and et cetera, et cetera. And then it becomes this perpetual toxic cycle that is only pretty much eating us alive.
I'd like
and
to know
only
why I should be grateful of being deprived of basic human rights and dignity
yeah,
the better part of half a fucking century. By sheer accident of birth.
yes,
I would like to know why anybody should be expected to be grateful for never getting enough help, or for, as a condition of getting at least some help, being expected to take abuse for it.
yeah,
That's how you're supposed to show your gratitude, is that the person who maybe helped you with, not even, enough to really put you on your feet, but a little something to keep you from literally dying from poverty. And
yeah,
you're supposed to take all kinds of shit and crap and abuse from them in gratitude. No, I say that it's time to flip that fucking script real quick. Because
real
the
quick,
people who should
yeah,
have gratitude are those with privilege who benefited from this whole entire unjust, untenable situation. Because our lack of privilege paid for theirs.
right,
While I
exactly.
was forced down in society's margins, for almost my entire life, okay, going on from age 12, after when I was trafficked as a homeless 12-year-old, on, long after I escaped my traffickers, okay, the only thing I got for all my efforts to pull myself up by my bootstraps for boots I didn't even have, with no help from this society, all I got, other than a crap ton of victim blaming, was to see the sun shine on everybody else's day. And now I'm 53 years old and I'm fed up. And I'm done. I'm done being polite. I'm done. I'm done. And no, I'm not going to shut up. And I don't care who gets their panties or their manties in a wad about it. This country needs to have some serious truth telling. Or as we say in my neck of the woods, a come to Jesus meeting. We need to
Yeah,
have honest conversations about who really should be grateful and appreciative of what and to whom.
ever wanted to share a thought or a perspective on a certain issue to an audience of your choosing? Well, then podcasting is the way to go. When it comes to podcasting, you can verbalize your insights on a range of topics in an unfiltered setting. You don't really need a voice for radio. Just pick up a mic and speak. Anyone can do it. And the best place to get your podcast up and running is the free podcast-based platform called Anchor. With Anchor, not only you can easily upload and or record your episodes and promos from the comfort of your own home, but you can have your podcast shared on various social media platforms. I've actually seen my own podcast, IzzyLand Uncut, on apps like Spotify and freaking iTunes. And as an added bonus, Anchor gives you the option to monetize your podcast. It's unreal! And that can be you. Just sign up today for free at anchor.fm. That's ANCHOR.FM. Get started on creating content, building your audience, and one day you may become the next Joe Rogan. Just begin your career in podcasting with Anchor and let your creativity go wild. And I feel like that's like just by how repetitive it's been used, like just shut up and be grateful. It's almost like a script. And I believe one of my friends, from South Africa mentioned that, she knows this as well. And it's like people are in our society are like zombies. They're like robots or whatever, literally repeating everything that they hear, including, you know, uh, shut up and take it, get a job or get counseling or do this, do that. It's like they're not even trying. It's pretty lazy if you ask me, because it's like,
It's what
you
there's
know,
a technical term for it, Izzy, and it's called privilege clinging. Because if they were ever forced to admit the truth, which would conflict with their narrow little worldview, they would be forced to admit that maybe they've got theirs by a system that wasn't entirely fair and square, that advantaged them at the expense of other people, at the cost of some real casualties in terms of suffering and human lives.
right.
And that's why I no longer, I'm done. If somebody says, hey, I gave you $20, be grateful, you should take my verbal abuse.
Fuck you.
Guess
It's
what,
like,
honey? I was the trafficking survivor. You know who you sound like when you tell me that shit? You sound like the John who said, here, take that $100, be grateful I didn't beat you worse
exactly.
after I raped you.
Exactly. It's just,
And I'm done being polite. I am fucking done. I'm not Andrew Yang. I'm not polite. I'm a truth teller. And I'm done. I'm done. If the people in this country don't want to act right, they're not going to have leaders that are going to act right, and if we have leaders that won't act right, I see no reason why I should grant consent to the entire to the shit show.
like, why would you be polite to those?
I really don't.
Why would you be polite to those who don't even deserve it? Because like, and I just hated, this, it's like that one article about toxic of positivity, and this talk about, oh, be positive, be positive. Even my friends got that talk. It's like, oh my god, it's like, it's so fake. I feel like those who put on like that fake positivity or whatever, I feel like they're even more dangerous, because all it takes is one thing to like really set them off, and it's like,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, it's like, come on, it's like, F you. It's like, you're bullshitting, so like, stop with all the, oh, be positive, you should, like, be nice, and all this other stuff. I'm sitting there going like, like, is this what we come to?
Why the fuck should I be nice, to people who feel
It's a privilege
that, after they've benefited unjustly, at at the expense of me and others like me, who've been reduced to having to literally beg for help, beg for our lives, which wasn't something I had in mind when I was struggling to pick up the pieces of my life as a poor trafficking victim with no family to even go back to, because losing my family is kind of how I got trafficked in the first place. Okay? With the blessing and support of an entire society full of selfish, self-absorbed, self-centered,
sons of
privileged
bitches
waffles that turned a blind eye and said, not my problem, got mine, fuck you. And I'm supposed to now at age 53 be nice. I don't care if somebody gives me $20. No. I'm owed.
Yeah.
I didn't ask to be born in this society. I did not ask to be trafficked. I did not ask to be denied access to the basic resources to live. I did not ask to be denied because of systemic discrimination, on top of the extra barriers I faced as a trafficking survivor who was stigmatized and criminalized for my entire working age life and shut out of jobs, not just middle class jobs, any fucking jobs. How much do they think, these people that got theirs at the expense of people like me who were deprived of getting ours unfairly, how much do they think their lives are worth? I can tell you, doing a quick computation off the top of my head, what the average working lifespan of 35 years to 40 years at the federal minimum wage, if we assume that I never went into debt for a college degree and earned a degree in math while homeless and eating from garbage cans, as a non-traditional age student. Thank you very much. Okay? But
Right.
suppose I never went beyond a GED, and the most I would have qualified for was a minimum wage job at McDog Foods. Do you know what an entire lifetime's worth of minimum wage, low-paying job opportunity wages add up to? Almost $750,000.
Yeah.
You know, and no. And I'm supposed to be grateful that that I'm allowed to live in squalor and extreme poverty, and forced to have to beg and beg and beg and not get helped most of the goddamn time. My pleas for help going ignored. I'm supposed to be grateful for this.
Yeah, like society just like,
No.
threw us away, like what? Because we don't have what they want. But the moment, like, if you like achieve something or whatever, now all of a sudden they come out the woodworks and they're like,
I
oh
am
my
owed
goodness.
for the theft. I am owed for the theft of my life, and so is every
Yeah.
trafficking survivor that
Yeah.
has also suffered similarly. We are owed reparations for the theft of our lives, with the full blessing and support of an entire society full of selfish, privileged assholes who felt entitled to get theirs at our expense, who felt entitled to kick and shove and elbow their way to the front of the fucking line for everything.
Yeah.
And I'm done, Izzy. I am done being polite. I'm not, I tried the being polite route. I tried being quiet and waiting nicely and, in a corner with my hat in hand and my head down, hoping and praying that my quote-unquote social betters might be moved to want to help with a couple dollars here and there. I'm done. I deserve better than having to literally beg for my life in a society full of people who don't care fuck all that I had human rights, that I had hopes and dreams too, but they felt entitled to crush them underfoot. You know what? I'm done being polite about it. And I think in some respects, Andrew Yang's a little bit wrong. There's a
Yeah.
lot of us. This is not just about human-centered capitalism. For me, this is about justice. This is about justice for an entire life of opportunities denied. Do you know, if I was from the upper middle class and I was, a male, I wouldn't have been trafficked, safe to say. And the data bears this out too. We know, based on the data, who the buyers are and who the ones being sold are. Okay? But suppose I was born a dude, even in lower middle class, working class, with the fact that I had a math degree and that I know how to trade. You think I'd have been poor my whole life? No, I probably would have been grabbed up and hired as a professional trader for a firm like Fidelity or Goldman Sachs or some shit. Yeah.
Yeah.
There's no meritocracy. And if Joe Biden or Kamala Harris want to whip one together tomorrow, how's it going to make it up for people like me who are now old and sick and disabled, who, there's no opportunities anymore? Because opportunities have a shelf life. You don't make it out of poverty by the time you're 40, it's pretty much game over. And I don't care what all these, think positive type of assholes want to say. You can't positive think your way out of being an oppressed, marginalized, member of an oppressed, marginalized group in a society that won't even acknowledge or recognize your human right to exist as a person.
Being positive costs money. Let me just say that. It costs a lot of energy. It costs a lot of money, and you shouldn't just be giving it away for free.
Trade? And I don't have a lot of money, because trading isn't about getting rich quick. Trading is about slowly taking a little bit of seed money and slowly growing it and managing your losses by managing your risk and limiting your losses. That is how you accumulate money in trade. Now, you won't hear all these trading gurus tell you that. Oh, they might tell you that, but they might pay lip service to it. And then in the next breath, it's just sign up for $4,000 a year to watch my live trading and join my chat room and get trade alerts that are worth, jack and squat. Because, by the time everybody else in the chat room piles on those trades have already gone, and they're all, you don't want to ever chase a trade. That's how you lose money. You don't chase trades. You find your own trades and you get on them when it's right, when, the candlesticks and the charts are right for the market that you're trying to trade in, but neither here nor there. Being positive wasn't how I was able to do this. I've always had to look at things like, what is the likelihood that this trade is going to work out? It's the same way I've had to live my life. What is the likelihood that if I get into this car to make my quota for my trafficker, so I don't get the living daylights beat out of me, that this John, who's using his money and his male privilege to basically buy a rape ticket, to have sex with a 13-year-old girl, what's the likelihood that I'm not going to end up getting chopped up and stuffed in a dumpster because that sick fucker wants to do that to a woman or a girl that this society don't care about? You think about it. I learned how to trade while I was being trafficked. I was exposed to guys that, my traffickers worked for, who were bookies, and they were trying to launder some of their money by trading commodities futures. This is back in the day before you had online brokerages and before there was an internet and all this other jazz. You actually had to look for trades in the newspaper, and they were based on what the prior day's closing price was. And then you had to map out a price chart and figure out what the trend line was going to be based on that, based on 24-hour-old data.
Oh, so you learned trading all the way back then.
Fucking A. I learned trading back then. And when it's like, but I just never had the chance to get a stable income and have employment and a normal life to be able to capitalize on that knowledge.
Yeah.
And when TD Ameritrade came out with their Thinkorswim platform, I never had money. Even after I got married, my husband was a disabled foundry worker getting Social Security, as a senior citizen. And he was supplementing that with a salvage business and a salvage car park business. And when nobody else would give me a chance for a job, well, I guess, salvaging scrap metal and having plenty of scars on my freaking arms to prove it. Okay. But there wasn't enough money for me to afford an individual health insurance plan. There wasn't enough money for me to even put anything in a trading account. Everything was going just for food and utilities. We were trying to fix up our house ourselves with buying supplies and materials. But then a series of, bad luck events, a second heart attack, the crash of 2008, not being able to, unload salvage metal fast enough, and the county rezoning our property without telling us, so that, the zoning department was hammering us with fines that we couldn't afford for having a, quote, illegal junkyard. So this was like three things happening all at once, just as I was entering my 40s. So it's like, well, now I got to try once again to re-enter the workforce after I wasn't able to get, any kind of legitimate opportunity before, now try to do it as a middle-aged woman. This is back in 2008, 2009. Well, over age 40, woman, out of the workforce for years, I didn't get a chance for anything, and we never had the money for me to be able to afford to learn things like software development. And how easy do you think that would have been for someone like me who grew up without technology, and then once technology became available, it wasn't available to the poor, you know? I mean, software engineering, that was a rich white dude field. Let's
Yeah.
face it. And a rich Asian dude field. It wasn't for, poor welfare moms or displaced homemakers or middle-aged ladies trying to re-enter the workforce because, of something happening, in the middle of their lives or their husband's lives, or all of a sudden their husband didn't have a job. And women of my generation, didn't have opportunities like young women do today, because discrimination against women was a lot worse. A lot worse. There might have been more jobs, but women were shut out, were discriminated against for those jobs. The only jobs that really opened to us were nursing, elementary school teacher, secretary, key punch operator, waitress, hairstylist.
Yeah.
There wasn't, and these were all jobs that paid. Oh, and domestics, working as, maids and nannies to other people.
Office and stuff.
Yeah, these were all jobs that didn't pay shit, So,
Yeah.
I mean, people want to pretend like that women my age, that because, things are more equal now, that I have all the opportunities that a younger woman in her 20s has, who's not disabled, who's not diabetic, and who has a fucking car, and who wasn't branded with a stigma, for being a trafficking victim like I was for, and that record wasn't expunged until I was 47. Try getting your first job. When you're competing against 18 and 20-year-olds, try getting your first job as a 47-year-old woman. Good luck with that. Good luck with that. And, I'm sick and tired of being told that I should be grateful that I've just basically been allowed to just barely survive in poverty and squalor without even being able to live with basic dignity and getting nothing but all my hopes and dreams crushed underfoot by everybody the fuck else. I'm supposed to be grateful for that?
Yeah.
No, I'm not.
And that actually
I'll be
brings me.
grateful if I get some justice and a fucking apology
Yeah.
for
That
the
actually,
theft of my life.
that actually brings me to my final question, because we're actually running low on time, but I was already enjoying this conversation. But it's I mean, unfortunately it's a hypothetical, but let's say universal basic income and universal health care and things like that existed as you were growing up and stuff. Do you believe that it would have changed the outcome of things? Like could you have a much more
It
affluential
would.
life, or could you like be have your own car and have a pretty um sensitive life, and be able to do the things you want and stuff, because I know you there were a lot of things that you wanted to do, like as you were growing up, but you had to put it like on the back burner because of your situation. Do you believe if you had those things before, accessible during your
It
time,
would.
you believe?
It wouldn't have made up for the systemic discrimination I faced as a female.
Yeah.
Okay, just like it wouldn't have made up for you as a black person. But I'll tell you what it would have done. It would have radically changed the trajectory of my life. My sister and I wouldn't have been so poor that we were starving and homeless and vulnerable to getting trafficked. We wouldn't have ended up trafficked. Which, can you imagine how that would have changed? Because so many doors of opportunity were closed to me throughout my entire life because of that alone.
Yeah.
And the how that, a UBI and universal health care, I wouldn't have been facing employers with visibly decayed and missing teeth from lack of health care. I wouldn't have, been so poor that I would have been, homeless and eating from garbage cans. My sister and I would have not been trafficked, and we would have been stably housed. We would have had access to, enough food to eat, and we would have been stably housed. We wouldn't have been trafficked. We still might not have gotten this, an equal opportunity for all the good paying jobs that dudes, get, because that's also a fact. Men are twice as likely to get callbacks on their resumes than women, which is why they were advising female job seekers to just, use the first initial of their first name and their last name in an attempt to try to hide our gender. Of course, it didn't work because, the gatekeepers to the jobs figured out real quick what was going on and still didn't get called back anyway. But the point is that at least it would have made the difference between not being homeless for 2/3 of my adult life. It would have made the difference of not getting trafficked when I was 12. And my sister getting trafficked, she was 17 at the time. It would have made the difference of that if I wasn't going to get an equal opportunity, for all the things that, male job applicants get the opportunities for, and, that women have to prove that we're twice as smart, twice as good just to be considered minimally qualified for. Yeah. I would have at least had a seed to forge my own path. And I still
you have something to build on. Yeah.
I would have had something to build on. I would have been able to create my own opportunity, and fuck the dumb shit. Okay.
Yeah.
But, I just think that there's a lot more that really, we live in a country full of people that don't even want to see someone like myself get any money at all, have a chance to even survive in basic dignity. When this society actually is kind of on the hook to me for the theft of my life.
And I will say this, because I definitely agree with you 100% with everything you said. And I did want to mention about the black person.
I was told by some guy with privilege, a rich engineer no less, that I should work for free in order to get more Patreon support, because I have a Patreon where I have tiers that offer, one-on-one personalized hangouts every weekend.
Yeah, you shouldn't have to work for free.
And he's telling me I should work for free to get that, to earn people's trust. And I'm like, wait a minute. What about other people needing to earn my trust after they basically threw my life away and got theirs at the expense of millions of women like me in this country?
Yeah, exactly.
What about the fact that being trafficked means I already work for free? Because if you consider getting raped by grown-ass men when you're a kid work, okay, which I do not, sorry, in exchange for money that I wasn't allowed to keep because my traffickers got it all. All right, I think I work plenty for free. And when I, tried to break into tech and responded to, an Upwork position where myself and the other developers, all of us got shafted. We weren't paid by the startup because the owners decided that they were going to take the investor money and snort it up their nose. So it's like 3 months I worked for free. I couldn't pay my bills. Now, this is how you end up staying poor and always having to beg like I'm having to now with a freaking emergency GoFundMe. Because of getting kept down your whole damn life and then being told by people with privilege, don't complain about your problems, don't complain. No, I have every right to complain about an injustice. I have every right to complain. And so do you, and so does anybody else who this country has done dirty. I'm sorry, but I have every right to complain when justice has been denied, fully denied.
And if society actually acknowledged our existence and actually treat us like we belong, we wouldn't be complaining,
Yeah, it's like...
That's what they don't understand. It's like...
Yeah, exactly. Bingo. And it's like, when this guy said about working for free, it's like, did you ever stop to think that working for free is somebody who's poor enough that they have to beg for money to buy their next pack of Depends, or their glucose test strips that Medicaid won't cover that cost $600 a month, or, their utilities just to keep their internet on so they have something to keep on trying with, because zero doesn't compound upwards. You feel me?
Yeah.
Zero don't compound upwards, right? And tell me I should work for freaking free in order to prove myself to the very people who, as a class, were unjustly enriched and benefited at my expense and at the expense of others just like me across this entire country. The only way I would have possibly been worse off and had it even worse is if I was a 53-year-old disabled and diabetic trafficking survivor who was also Black.
Yeah.
Okay, and I'm not, you know what? I'm not going to pull any punches about that. I know it. I see it. And, I mean, we, as a country, it's not, the onus is not on individuals in poverty who are suffering because of systemic oppression, which is nothing but one big butt ugly intergenerational privilege transfer vehicle that serves up the human rights of consumable, disposable people in economies of scale. Just FYI.
Yeah.
I mean, we need a UBI. Yeah, we need universal health care. But I'm not playing Mrs. Nice Guy anymore. When I'm told that I'm not allowed to complain, when I'm still not getting my basic needs met, now that I have no opportunity left because of my age alone.
Yeah, for
After
me.
this society made damn sure that I wouldn't have any opportunities when I was younger, before I got sick, before I became disabled, and decades before I became diabetic. No, I mean, I have every right to complain, and no, I will not shut up. And there's a whole lot of systemic injustice that needs to be made right, and that's just one of them.
Oh yeah.
That's just one example. There's many others, and I think that when we talk about, things like, we need to have nuanced discussions. Here's my idea of nuanced discussion. No, it is not the onus on oppressed, downtrodden, marginalized, and disprivileged individuals to unfuck our lives that we didn't fuck into the ground ourselves. The onus for rectifying structural oppression, structural discrimination, the onus for that is not on individuals who don't even have the means to fight back. It is on those who do have the means, who've benefited unjustly from this entire sordid arrangement, and those benefits were cumulative. When I see guys that are young enough to be my kid or even my grandkid get mouthy with me and tell me I have no right to complain, I've got 2 words to say to them in 52 different languages, but they all amount to the same, beginning in F and ending in U.
Yeah.
If you get me. And Izzy, don't ever change who you are or apologize for telling your truths. And don't you ever shut up for anybody. Don't you ever.
Yeah.
Don't you ever, my brother.
And I will say, like, when you mentioned, like, you had, some young folks saying that, oh, you shouldn't be complaining. And I've had older folks who've been telling me, oh, what you're going through is nothing compared to what I went through, which is actually pretty dismissive, disrespectful.
You tell them to go shit in their hat.
Yeah, but thing about it is, like, these individuals that we speak of, they actually have, like, the authority and stuff, like, especially like these older folks, and it's my word against theirs, because like when they look at them, they're just going to go, oh well, they have power of authority, they could say this and do that, you know, or this, or you're 28-year-old black man. Like some of them might not even say it, but that's what they're insinuating. And the problem is that there are not enough people like us in power. There's just too much corruption, and just people have their own agenda. It's like it's why, like, my friend in Canada, why she had to, completely assimilate to a different culture, with the French, because, it was a matter of life and death, and the other side wasn't really helping her. Like, she's been there for over a decade, and if she stayed any longer, she was gonna die, and so she had to like, make an emergency exit to the French side and make sure like she gets the proper care and stuff. She shouldn't have to do that. Like, if these people were
No.
doing their jobs. No, yes, if these people were doing their jobs, and she told me, like, on the previous episode, if these people were doing their jobs, like, she wouldn't have tried to rush out there or whatever. She would just like take her time, and when she's ready to, leave or whatever, she can. But it's like this society, it's like, yeah, they're just like, I don't know what you call it. I don't know if it's like self entitlement, narcissism,
Oh, it is
mischief
all
based,
that.
or
I mean,
bullying.
we have
Yeah,
a society that is number one in the
apathy.
entire world for producing serial killers.
Oh yeah,
Number
yeah.
one. Number one in mass incarceration. Number one in producing serial killers. Number one in in poverty and
Suicides,
maternal death rates out of
overdoses.
the
Yeah,
entire developed world. In fact, our maternal mortality rate is on par with certain sub-Saharan countries in Africa, which has been pillaged, by all kinds of problems going on over there.
it's
But
probably South Africa.
oh yeah, that yes,
That's where one of my friends.
and
That's where one of my friends are. Yeah,
and I mean, I remember when South Africa was still an apartheid state, and you would get derided and heaped with abuse if you dared to say apartheid isn't right.
yeah,
That made you a commie. That made you in my case, they would accuse me of being, somebody who hates white dudes. Give me a fucking break. No, I don't hate white dudes. I hate injustices against anybody who's not a white dude who dares to speak out and say, hey, I have human rights. I'm a human being. I don't deserve to be put through this shit. There's a difference.
yeah.
And yet people in this country have yet to figure that out. But I remember being younger and saying, hey, no, fuck, Bono's right, man. Fuck South. If they're gonna, we shouldn't trade with them if they're gonna be like that. If they're going to have an apartheid state, I mean, I remember those days when it was under President de Klerk, under the Boers and the South Afrikaners were mostly, Dutch and a few English.
Yeah.
I remember those days very well. I remember when apartheid ended. I remember when Nelson Mandela was freed from prison. Now, he may not have been a saint, and he may have done some fucked up shit, but let's face it, what was being done, to African people in their own country was some fucked up shit too. And yet you could not have a conversation about this when South Africa was apartheid. You could not have a conversation about that here in this country without somebody or a bunch of somebodies automatically wanting to heap scorn and abuse upon you for daring to speak out for fairness and for justice. And it's the same deal with trafficking survivors like myself, the older ones.
Yeah.
It's the same with young Black activists who are involved with Black Lives Matter. you know, the fact that we still can't even get it amounts to privilege clinging is what it amounts to, which means those who have the privilege, who benefited unjustly from systemic injustices against entire groups of people, don't want to have to relinquish any of their privileges to make shit right. Instead, they want to put the onus on the person on individuals who are downtrodden, you know, and then tell us we should be grateful for not getting enough help. I should be grateful for having to beg and getting my pleas for help ignored, and most of the time get hardly any help at all, when I shouldn't even have to be reduced to having to beg. That wasn't, you know, how what I struggled so hard all my life for, to end up having to be. You know, I struggled with no help in a society that threw me away at age 12 and kept throwing me away ever since. And I'm done being polite, dude. I'm done. And to be told that I should be expected to just shut up and suck it up and take it and not complain when, you know, shit needs to be made right.
It's time to break the cycle.
Shit needs to be made right, and it's not enough. It's not enough. A UBI at this point is not enough.
Yeah, there's
systemic changes.
There's definitely a lot of work that needs to be done. It's like I really hope it doesn't stop there. And
I'm not gonna stop.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm not gonna shut up. I'm not.
Yeah,
I know
me
I'm
neither.
not. I hope you don't either, because
I don't know.
You know.
But I know that, like, if I had UBI, I'd be able to get out of this toxic environment, and be able to, like, gain some more energy to spread this message and get stories like yours and mine out there, and so the world can hear it, and also to do things like, you know, run for office, or, you know, start a business and things like that, you know.
Yeah.
But I had to, like, put it off to the side due to my situation, and yeah, it's not cheap, and it's like, yeah.
And one of the things that really, really disturbs me is I've seen a pattern play out over and over in my lifetime, and I see it playing out again. And that is people who are hanging on for dear life, who are not being economically supported or helped in these movements, but we're the ones expected to do the bulk of the heavy lifting to lend credence to the movements. And yet, when I have to beg for help, my pleas go ignored. When I'm begging and it's a matter of life and death, because if my electric gets shut off, my insulin spoils. Right?
Yeah.
I have the ability to trade. Well, I need enough of a runway to be able to be a professional trader, because I have no other opportunities now at this late stage of my life, being older. I'm up against the barriers of age discrimination, plus I am just physically disabled, and I have, you know, health problems from being a diabetic. That poverty is not helping me manage very well at all. And when I see over and over again that it's the poor who are expected to do the heavy lifting and all the volunteering, while people from privilege get the paid positions and get to frame the entire conversation, you know, on how things should go. I'm at the point where it's like, no, I'm not down with this. I'll walk. I'm not going to be. I've seen this play out over and over again throughout my life. And let's just put it this way. I'm no longer amused. I'm not amused. And that's why I have difficulty putting on a positive, happy, happy, joy face. It's not that I don't appreciate help. It's that I don't appreciate being told that I should be grateful for crumbs.
Exactly.
when this society owes me for the theft of my fucking life.
Yes.
We're talking about the better part of 4 decades of opportunities denied, of being denied housing, jobs, and health care because of being poor, female, and a trafficking survivor. Not because of anything I personally did wrong. This is a country that when felons are exonerated, they are allowed to sue the state and get recompense, financial recompense for lost wages and, for being taken out of the workforce and having that barrier to try to overcome to get reintegrated in society. I mean, we talk about guys like Nick Yaris and Ray Crone that were given damage awards and in the tens of millions of dollars. Okay?
Yeah.
And those guys, neither of those guys whose names I mentioned were angels, understand me. But yet for poor older women like myself who were shut out, I'm talking about the older women who were shut out of opportunities our entire lives, who were trafficking survivors, who, suffered, an intersectionality of oppressions and discrimination because of that. Being told we should be grateful if somebody gives us, $5 so we can buy a dozen of eggs so we don't fucking starve to death.
Right.
No, we're owed damage awards for the theft of our lives. If they can give a guy like Ray Crone, who was no angel, and Nick Yaris, who also kind of had a criminal record before he was falsely convicted of a crime he didn't do, okay? If they can give those guys tens of millions of dollars, then I think the very least they should give people like me is enough money to live in comfort and dignity for what few years we have left now that we're old and sick. Without telling us we should be grateful for getting less help than we need and having to beg for it and take all kinds of crap and abuse in the process. I'm done being polite. Done.
And on that note, we're gonna have to close it out. We're kind of out of time. Great talk, but you might share with everyone like your Twitter handle or any handle on your any social media account, whatever.
Yeah, my handle is at Jacqueline Homan. That's on Twitter. And that's at JACQUELINEHOMAN. And I do have a GoFundMe going right now. And if it's okay with you, I will, post the link and you can put that up as soon as I can. Just bear with me. Give me a minute to find it and grab it.
Okay.
But I think a lot of people are just looking at things completely wrong and they're missing the plot by a miracle mile. And that's putting it very politely, The people that should be grateful and appreciative are the people who got to have their opportunities and their nice lives at the expense of a whole hell of a lot of us who were deprived of getting a chance, even a chance to get ours. So, I just... Hang on, let me find this thing. Okay. I'm not very tech savvy, so let me get this posted on here. Where's the screen at? Okay. I'm posting the link in the chat.
Got it.
Okay.
Okay, let me go ahead and...
and then just recently, I had somebody, with privilege who went out of the way to slander me and sabotage the only economic opportunity I have left for making a self-employment attempt work for me so that I don't have to keep begging for non-forthcoming help anymore. And ironically, this person is a member of Yang Gang.
Yeah, I heard
Member of
that.
Humanity First. Real humanity first.
Yeah, as I say, yeah, there are those fakes with the blue hats and stuff. Like I've encountered them myself. It's like I believe like when Andrew Yang dropped out, you really began to see who were who were just along for the ride and who were really were about humanity first.
Yeah, and it's like to the credit of the people who um, run the Humanity First Slack, I will, like to give a personal shout out to Angelo Mendoza and Brendan Carpenter and Yenny. I can't remember her last name. Her name is Yenny. She's a very sweet woman. And
Yeah,
Catherine,
Nate.
Catherine M. Another. I mean, I really would like to give them a shout out for at least trying to take matters like this seriously when they happen.
Hell
It's
yeah.
just that it sucks when you feel like what you thought was a safe place or a safe space for you, and you find out that it's not. And somebody who's supposedly all about humanity first was just a social predator who was out to target somebody who was vulnerable to abuse, and to use
Yes.
their privilege to put themselves in a position of being able to do it and sabotage your only economic opportunity left available to you as an older disabled woman. I think it takes a real special type of shitty person to do that. And it's, that's all I got to say about that.
Yeah.
So because that person basically destroyed the only support structure that I had, that I only just very recently had, after an entire lifetime of having none, it's like, well, yeah, now I guess I'm having to freaking beg, and as usual, probably not get helped, as usual, or not get helped with enough. And I'm just so sick and tired. So please, Izzy, don't shut up. We're not going to let this go, because it's, it's not just poverty was a problem long before white guys were facing getting automated out of their middle class jobs. Long before rich, people in general, regardless of race and gender, were getting automated out of their jobs. Poverty as a deadly weapon of economic terrorism has always been a human rights violation, even if it was only people like me, people like you, people like many of your friends, and we can't let the truth get swept under the rug. We can't. And we've got to speak out when we see movements that are using us to give themselves credence, using us as poster children. But then when when we need help and support, not stepping up to the plate, we need to call that shit out. Don't let anybody use you for your vote. Don't let anybody use you for your time. And don't let anybody tell you that you should have to work for free.
You heard what she said, folks. It's like we can't like just overlook these sort of things, and it's never shut up, and if you have a story to tell, definitely like shout to the rooftops, and like and definitely like if you do want to come come onto my podcast and share your story as well, definitely reach out to me. Direct message me by going by reaching me on Twitter at Izzy Bolden. That's IzzyBolden. So you can get the chance to to get on the show and discuss these sorts of issues and many more. You know, even the people that Jacqueline gave a shout out to, like, definitely it messes me, and you know, and like let's talk about these things. But that's it for today's episode. Once again, thank you, Jacqueline, for coming on. It was great to have you on. I was like, I just wanted to give you this platform because you had so much to talk about. But until next time, I'll see you all again on the next episode of IzzyLand Uncut.